Assalamualaikum and welcome to Kaam Kahani, a podcast for the career curious. आज हमारे साथ हैं Zaayer merchant. He is the Chief Operating Officer of Z2C, one of Pakistan's largest media and technology groups. So welcome to Zaayer. It's great to have you on Kaam Kahani.
Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So Zaayer, you've just come back quite recently from the US. मुझे ये पूछना था, I'm really curious कि you were working in the US and now you're working here. Pakistan technology-wise and talent-wise कितना पीछे है अभी भी?
Pakistan, in a lot of ways, isn't as far behind as people think it is. In certain ways, it is. So, मुझे तकरीबन कितने 9 साल हो गए थे US में, 4-5 साल काम कर रहा था वहाँ पे एजेंसी में. Essentially, difference यही था कि yes, especially data usage में, for example, for agency business, data usage में बहुत पीछे था. अभी भी अगर जाके देखें तो डिजिटल आराम से 50% पहुंच गई है मीडिया स्पेंड में इन द यूएस फॉर एग्जांपल वर्सेस पाकिस्तान में अभी भी मैं आके देख रहा हूँ नंबर्स 20 मे बी 30%. सो अभी उसमें भी बहुत गैप है और डेटा यूसेज बहुत कम है. लेकिन उसका फिर एक चीज़ यही हुई है कि हमने बहुत सारी जो यूएस में टेस्टिंग फेज़ हुआ है फ्रॉड और एक्सेट्रा हर चीज़ में वो सब फिर हम स्किप करके हम उसके ऊपर कैच अप कर रहे हैं. अब एक और चीज़ है कि कुकीज़ आर बीइंग डेप्रिकेटेड इन 2025 2026 भी हो जाएगा. गूगल पीछे ही करता रहता है बिकॉज़ इट्स अ मनी मशीन फॉर देम. इट विल कीप गेटिंग पुश्ड बैक बट एक बार वो चला गया देन इट्स अ लेवल प्लेइंग फील्ड फॉर द एंटायर वर्ल्ड बिकॉज that change happens across the entire world and that's where Pakistan is suddenly in a position to catch up very quickly with the use of first party data. So उस मामले में जो है हम पहुंच जाएंगे. So again digital के usage में हम थोड़ा सा पीछे हैं but this is the perfect time especially with this announcement of cookies being deprecated. और उसको भी काफ़ी टाइम हो गया है but 3 साल हैं तकरीबन. There's a lot of work to be done but can very easily be done to catch up to the rest of the world. हाँ it for digital बहुत अहम है because if you look at it all of your data and all of your targeting and all of the data collected on any browser is cookie based. So every time you go to a website, that website will plant a small sort of tracking pixel. They call it a cookie. It's based off के crumbs होते हैं जो पूरा bread crumb की trail बन जाती है आपकी कि आप फिर जब जाते रहो अलग websites पे तो आपको मिलेगा. So वो cookie place होता है and browser पे so that the website can also then see what you're doing across the web etc. and collect that data. और that's usually based on मतलब आपकी ये browsing activity है आप इस पेज पे गए उस पे ये मेटा डेटा एक्सेट्रा था. अब वो ट्रैकिंग फंक्शनैलिटी थोड़ी बंद हो रही है विच मीन्स कि आप उस वेबसाइट पे 2026 तक फास्ट फॉरवर्ड कर लें नो कुकीज़ एनी मोर. आप वेबसाइट पे जाएंगे आपको सिर्फ तब वो रियली ट्रैक कर पाएंगे जब आपने कोई ईमेल एड्रेस या फ़ोन नंबर या कुछ हो दैट्स एसोसिएटेड विथ यू. अब गूगल के पास बहुत बड़ा फर्स्ट पार्टी का स्टोर होगा बट देन टारगेटिंग यूजिंग दैट बिकम्स एन इशू. सो बेसिकली आप क्या करेंगे आपने जो है इट विल द ओनर्स बिकम्स ऑन यू कि आप कलेक्ट करें वो डेटा लोगों से और उनको कोई इंसेंटिव दें. अब न्यूज़लेटर के लिए आपने सब्सक्राइब कर लिया तो आपका कोई आइडेंटिफायर चला गया है उसके पास. अब वो आइडेंटिफायर के बेसिस पे फिर वो आपको टारगेट कर सकते हैं बट दैट्स इट. बियॉन्ड दैट अगर आप बोलेंगे आई वांट टू टारगेट पीपल लाइक यू नो हु हैव cars or who were browsing or interested in cars etc. that will not be easy anymore. Like abhi aap cookie based pe hota hai and it's not cookie based data is not that accurate either. मतलब there is a chance but there's also a chance आपने एक website गलती से खोल ली थी but वो फिर आपको डाल देगा उस bucket में. So cookie based targeting tends to be very broad. वो भी कम हो जाएगी. So we'll have to become more precise लेकिन targeting options बहुत कम हो जाएंगे.
Okay, so that'll be a game changer.
That will be a very big shift and I mean आपके पास जो data store हो रहा है your Oracle Blue का है DMP huge DMP it's going to be useless in 3 years. They've stopped supporting it. Like Oracle doesn't provide or isn't making many major updates right now because 3 साल में वैसे ही बंद हो जाएगा. It's a DMP data management platform for cookie based stuff. So they're again shifting their focus to their customer data platform which collects first party data and uses that.
So पाकिस्तान में जो टैलेंट अभी है करंटली द करंट स्टेज आपको लगता है वो इक्विप्ड है टू फॉर द फ्यूचर चैलेंजेस व्हिच आर कमिंग अहेड?
As of now maybe there is some work to do but it's not that we can't do it. It just requires a little bit of focused effort to get there, and that is going to fall on the agencies and the places of work to then invest in training those people to adapt to those technologies and understand what it is. Because at the end of the day, अगर आप जाएंगे वहाँ पे और वो आपको काम ही इतना बेसिक देंगे या टीवी का ही देंगे, मतलब 10 साल में भी टीवी का ही काम दे रहे हैं, तो आपके पास तो वो स्किल्स हैं, तो वो उनके ऊपर होता है कि भाई आपको वो काम दें और फिर आपको इक्विप करें कि भाई ये इस तरह से जाना है, ये करना है, and this is the new way forward, and we'll teach you how to do it, and then you can do it. So that is the onus will fall on agencies, and we are getting to positions where we are then starting to push those people and train them in those new technologies and mechanisms to be equipped for that future.
So, like आपकी जो agency है, it employs like hundreds of planners and buyers, media planning करते हैं. तो ज़्यादातर traditionally agencies TV के साथ काम करती रही हैं, right? तो TV की media planning करते हैं, TV पे spots लगाते हैं वगैरह वगैरह, right? So you have that strong sort of capability going ahead. लेकिन और अब जो है वो I think your probably 50% of your planners would be digital ready, right? तो वो जो TV वाले उनकी capabilities हैं, उनको किस तरह convert कर रहे हैं आप into digital?
हमने recently थोड़ा सा model shift करने की जो है shift किया है,
right,
and we're in the transition phase right now. हमने digital separate कर दिया. So about, I mean, our digital specialists are about the same proportion as our digital spend. मतलब it's 25% spend, 30%, 35% digital planners and digital buyers. But हमने वो अब separate कर दिया, because what we've also started doing is branching out into international markets for learnings. Separate say, I mean that all digital is now a specialty occupation and sits separately from the traditional agency. So now with this model, it's not कि, I mean, if you are a specific brand or agency, आपके पास dedicated resources नहीं होंगे, आपके पास वही dedicated resources होंगे. But that dedicated resource no longer reports to your account manager. अब वो dedicated resource reports to a digital specialist. So if he is a social media specialist, he reports into the social media lead.
ठीक है.
And sits with the rest of the social media team. He doesn't sit with your account team.
ठीक है.
The reason we adopted that is because अब आप digital पे काम कर रहे हैं, you can then sit with the rest of your digital team. तो अगर मैं एक account पे कुछ implement कर रहा हूँ, audience targeting में नहीं implement कर रहा हूँ, लेकिन मेरे साथ वाला बंदा ऑडियंस इम्प्लीमेंट कर रहा है, ऐसे ही हम बोला कि यार चाय पे चलो, मेरे साथ में ही बैठा हुआ है, चाय पे चलो, या ऐसी ही रैंडम कॉन्वर्सेशन हो गई, वो अपना बता रहा है ऑडियंस, अच्छा तुम ऑडियंसेस कर रहे हो, बताओ, टेल मी मोर अबाउट, you get sharing of knowledge, sharing of ideas. So it's more so we went down that route for the reason that then you can share that knowledge. अच्छा, let me take that one step further. Internationally speaking, TV पे आपकी डिमांड नहीं आएगी, because let's face it, TV के लिए you need some local knowledge to understand कि अच्छा ये चैनल होगा, ये इधर जो है जाना चाहिए. ठीक है, to some extent you can sort of automate it, but understanding and having those contacts and connections within the TV space is important. Digital is pretty agnostic.
Oh, okay.
मतलब आप जाओ, I can sit here, I mean really, I can sit here and buy an ad on CNET in the US. I just have to pay the right.
So relationships की ज़रूरत नहीं है as such.
So relationships थोड़ी कम ज़रूरत है. Like वो फिर भी रहेगी. It will always. I mean, advertising is a field that requires relationships, but it doesn't require the depth कि आप जो है चलते जाएं, जाते जाएं सबके साथ और चाय पीते जाएं सबके साथ. वो इतनी ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ती है. I mean, even if you look at the digital team, like उनकी इतनी ज़्यादा बाहर जाके meetings नहीं होती है versus the TV buying people that sit in my office. उनको थोड़ा ज़्यादा मैंने देखा है कि वो जा रहे हैं. मतलब मेरे न्यूज़ वाले बंदे से मुझे अगर मुझे उससे बात करनी है तो मुझे पहले से मैसेज करना होता है, क्योंकि वो हमेशा किसी के साथ बैठा हुआ चाय पी रहा होता है.
कितनी चाय पीता होगा वो?
बहुत चाय पीता है. मतलब लिटरली मैं 11 बजे जाऊँ नहीं है, 1 बजे जाऊँ नहीं है, मतलब 3:30 बजे आया, इस लाइक यार मैं डॉन से होके आया, एक्सप्रेस से होके आया, हर जगह से होके आया. Like अच्छा.
और मैंने भी all the agency people that I've met, they have been relationship people, you know, people who build relationships, who maintain relationships, and they're people persons. लेकिन अब जो what you're saying is कि अब digital agencies के अंदर you need knowledge specialists. You need people who are.
We have taken that shift to separate them, and then obviously be able to like learn and share. And the international piece I was talking about, so we've also started working with agencies internationally. And again, because of this, you don't require as many relationships in digital. We get a lot of demand from the digital space where we just go out and we're like, यार देखो तुम्हें entry level बंदा मिलता है $4,000 का,
right.
हम आधे से कम कर देते हैं उसको,
right.
ठीक है, आपको 1 साल का एक्सपीरियंस और ट्रेंड बंदा मिल जाएगा डिजिटल पे. अब आपकी जो स्पेशलिस्ट वेज ऑफ वर्किंग है, एग्जैक्ट वेज ऑफ वर्किंग है, वो आपको थोड़ी सी कहानी है. तो बिकॉज डिजिटल डजंट रिक्वायर एज मनी रिलेशनशिप्स और आपको इतनी जो है जाना नहीं पड़ता है लोगों से मिलने और सब मेंटेन करने के लिए. ग्लोबली भी यही है, आप इतनी सारी बाइंग जो है ऑनलाइन कर लेते हो, प्रोग्रामेटिकली कर लेते हो, तो आप दुनिया में कहीं भी बैठ के कहीं और एड्स खरीद सकते हो थियोरेटिकली. मैं यहाँ पे बैठ के जो है सीनेट यूएस की एड खरीद सकता हूँ. सो आपको इतनी ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ती अगेन पर्सनल रिलेशनशिप्स करने की. इसलिए फिर जो हम जाते हैं इंटरनेशनल मार्केट में जाके बस यही बोलते हैं कि यार देखो आपको नया एंट्री लेवल रिसोर्स $4,000 का पड़ता है, मैं आपको ट्रेंड 1 year एक्सपीरियंस रिसोर्स उसके आधे से कम में दे देता हूँ.
राइट.
ठीक है. सो अब उसके ऊपर फिर वो खुद भी बोलते हैं अच्छा यार चलो टेस्ट करते हैं एवरीथिंग एंड वी स्टार्ट टेस्टिंग विद देम. वो लेते हैं एंड एंट्री लेवल रिसोर्स आपको पहले लेना होता है, ट्रेन करना होता है, उसको नॉलेज देनी होती है, फिर आप अपनी स्पेशलिटी वेज ऑफ वर्किंग सिखाओ. अब आप बोलो कि CPM क्या है, वो बोलेगा CPM कौन. So you have to train them on the entire basics and everything, which understandable. Like ठीक है, even if they understand those basics, but how do you work in DV360 for example? कैसे, how does the platform work for example? They don't know, you have to train them. यहाँ पे we do that training and everything and we go and tell them if it's less than half and you're getting a trained resource on DV360, he already knows how to operate DV360. अब आप उसको जाके बोला यार हम ये डेटा यूज़ कर रहे हैं, शायद वो बोले कि यार अच्छा ये डेटा को सोर्स कहाँ से करना है और वो प्लेटफॉर्म कैसे चलता है, वो आपको
थोड़ा बहुत
सिखाना
करना पड़ेगा. हाँ.
थोड़ा बहुत तो आपको your ways of working specifically because every country, every account is different. मतलब I was on Kraft Heinz, I switched to Best Buy, I relearned so much because even just between those two accounts there was such a difference. But I mean वो थोड़ा सा आपको सिखाना होता है, but at least you get a trained resource. And so what we started doing is working with international agencies and giving them these resources. So the resource sits in Karachi or Islamabad or Lahore, and they report to a manager and they're working on an account like Etisalat in Dubai, Visa South Africa, we have a few going in Europe, and we're sort of expanding relatively quickly inshallah. So those are picking up, and so if the person's sitting here working with data driven targeting in Dubai or South Africa, jahan bhi, so then the person sitting next to him who's working on the local account can just turn around and be like, "Acha, tum kya kar rahe ho? Acha, how can I do this here?" So then those learnings transfer a lot
automatically
more.
Transfer शुरू हो जाता है learning का.
That's why what we started doing is digital, at least initially. We're having sit in the same sort of circle so that they can communicate and like, you know, you have weekly meetings for digital to share acha kya ho raha hai, any updates, anything cool you did. That's new that you don't think anyone else would have had, or any successful campaigns you ran. So it's a share of knowledge which can then be transferred not only locally but also like from South Africa to the UAE. So we have a sort of hub going on over here, and there are a lot of hubs. I mean, when I was working in the US, for example, a lot of my buying and operations team sat in Colombia, out of the PGD Latin America hub.
Okay.
Colombia, I think there were a couple in Mexico. Puerto Rico was another big one. So wahan pe hire karke because it's cheaper. They will do that, and then some of the more relatively simpler tasks, like non-client communication tasks. So even the people we're deploying, they're not necessarily client-facing.
They're technical people.
So they are more technical and like skilled in digital buying, for example, rather than strategy and like actually having to sell to clients. And we do have a few that do that, but for the most part, again, relationship requirements are lower over there.
And I'm sure strategy or relationships, maybe you can develop talent here, right?
There is the potential, and over there we're going to have to focus more on communication in English, for example, because again, अब आप वहाँ जाएंगे, आपका client far English बोल रहा है, and if you're not able to keep up, then it doesn't look good. And so that's why we haven't, I mean, that will take years to build and have the agencies trust कि भाई आप ये कर सकें. And plus फिर in person बैठ के बात करना अलग बात है versus then having to do it online. और हमने किया है, सबने COVID में किया है, but we've seen कि clients को भी करना है. So अभी उस पे हमने push नहीं किया है. There is a lot of potential there that we can, you know, have support and learning strategy, etc. as well. But oftentimes strategy also requires क्या कहते हैं, is sitting there and understanding the country and the way that people consume media in that country. versus then technical digital specialists may not need that knowledge. So that's where some of that difference comes in, and that is a bit of like it's harder to get to, and so it'll take us a few years to get there. Even like Colombia, like again, I was a strategy person sitting in Chicago, able to go to my client's office and speak to them. They were just doing the back-end operations. They did not speak to the client, maybe a few emails.
So you were the client-facing.
I was the client-facing contact, but then the back-end, I didn't have to do any buying because.
वैसे पाकिस्तान में ये मॉडल जो dealing directly with the client call centers में already implement हो रहा है to an extent, right? They're actually speaking the client's language और वो client से उसी ज़बान में और उसी culture को ज़हन में रखते हुए बात कर रहे हैं, right? So they're sort of not pretending, but they're just catering to the clients in America, for example.
Yeah, and I mean that does work, especially in a lot of when again it's very simpler, sort of technical.
Yes.
It's technical things that you're doing. Yeah, so why is your phone not working? Okay, let me reset a few things on my end, and then like those sorts of diagnoses. I've been in that situation where I was in the US, मेरा phone जो है बंद हो गया, मेरा roaming नहीं चल रहा था, मैं कनाडा गया था रोड से, तो मैंने कॉल किया, फिलीपीन से कोई उठा रहा है और वो एक्सेंट से बहुत जल्दी पता चल गया कि ये फिलीपींस में बैठा है बंदा. नहीं समझ में आ रहा था उसको, मेरी नहीं समझ में आ रही थी ज़बान, मैं उसको बोल रहा हूँ, उसको मुझे मेरा भी नहीं समझ में आ रहा है. 15 मिनट घुमा के मैं बोला यार कैन आई स्पीक टू योर मैनेजर. I very clearly got connected to an American after that.
Okay.
We were able to communicate with each other because it was a little more complex about something in the settings for my account had gone wrong कि मेरा roaming नहीं चल रहा था, so we had to reset a lot of things on his end. So there are sort of some of those instances where like that does fall apart. So like the simpler technical things, yeah, sure that works, and that's why I say, okay, it's not out of reach, but we will have to do a lot of work in like grooming and making sure that those resources are well put together to be able to then deal with the client. And then you also have language barriers like UAE mein, for example. A lot of account managers speak Arabic because the clients want to speak Arabic.
They're more comfortable.
Semi-government organization में भी जाएंगे तो उसको तो Arabic में बोलना होगा. So having and that's why in the UAE Lebanese talent on ground is very popular because they speak Arabic and so they're able to converse with the client. Oftentimes the client maybe marketing is the guy is Lebanese. So again, like then they all speak in Arabic, and I've been in the room. I interned in the UAE once at a creative agency. I was sitting in the room, they're all just speaking in Arabic, and I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs because I don't understand anything. Even though I wrote the copy in English, they were all speaking in Arabic. But anyway, I mean, point being that we are grooming the technical sort of back-end talent that just talks to the teams, and thoda sa aata hai barrier, but for the most part, that's easy to overcome.
And we'll get there, and we'll
get there, inshallah. Even where we're getting to the strategy portion, like if you're going to a country like South Africa or the UK, you can definitely even work on the strategy piece.
In terms of like training and developing your talent, is Z2C like a learning organization? Do you guys focus on trainings and learning?
Absolutely. इतना तो मैं definitely कह सकता हूँ. So we have a lot of learnings programs set up, and even with our international counterparts, what we did first was we're like, give us access to your full platform so that we can make those trainings available, and then we set a curriculum for the new hires coming in that are specifically going to the digital department. We have a full internship curriculum set up as well in internship, and then if you're a new hire and you haven't been through that, then you have the whole curriculum to go through before you're then eligible for deployment, for example, internationally. So that plus then they are sitting with a fully trained resource, you learn from them. Anyone who's new and employed internationally, we pair them up with a senior manager who sits उनके पीछे बैठता है. I mean बैठता नहीं, but like उनके area में बैठा होता है support के लिए. So मेरे सामने मतलब मैं meetings में बैठा होता हूँ with one of them. एक आता है लड़का is like यार मुझे email में help कर दो. And immediately he got up and left.
So learning of international
so it's not only for the international. I guess I'm focusing a little bit over there because I helped set that up very recently. Like we do have sort of all those programs set up, and obviously when you go through the management training thing, we have an entire system set up to help you go through, like you get on hands experience as well as then have an availability of courses now across the Publicis network. Marcel is their global thing, global platform that we're enabling right now, so that the entire learning platform is available, and there are hundreds of courses. I mean, I've done maybe 50 hours on Marcel, and there are thousands and thousands of hours available of content that you can learn, everything from Python to digital buying to TV planning. पूरा जो है उस पर curriculum available है, and we've made all of that. So we're unlocking that so that those courses are available
आजकल
online.
कंटेंट बहुत सारा हो गया है. Like, अगर आप सीखना चाहते हैं, so then I mean there is so much available to you और आपको पे भी नहीं करना पड़ता, मतलब so much available to you for free.
There is a wealth of knowledge out there, and मतलब ठीक है, there are a few that are focused, a few that are more focused than others. Some are specialized knowledge which you may not need. लेकिन knowledge is never a bad thing. I mean, if you understand Google Analytics and you come into digital buying, and suddenly I start asking you about data, you're able to have that conversation. मेरे साथ recently हुआ था because I was working on data and मैंने digital buying के lead को बुलाया. He was like, yeah, मैं नहीं आ सकता इस time पे because you asked specifically, but my senior manager sitting there, he was actually doing a degree in analytics.
Wow.
And he actually pushed me down a path where I'm like, yeah, I didn't think of this. This is a very good, and I want to keep working with you on this. So I mean, even like yesterday, I just tapped him on the shoulder. I was like, yeah, can you come with me? I have some questions. If you're free right now. आ गया, and we just had another 1 hour conversation about it. So we need to go down this route, and I think if we set this up, then we can actually enable data more effectively for our clients.
So you accommodated because you saw the value in it.
Yeah, and I mean, there's more so even like beyond that. Like anytime you go and you learn on the job, you will always be paired up with someone that you're learning from until you are ready to be then move forward to actually take on that role yourself. A lot of hands-on learning always available, and we've always tried to encourage, and we're also setting up KPIs in a way that you are evaluated based on how the people under you were also performing and how much they learned and how much they're progressing. I mean, if they're not progressing or like you're not providing support or they're like, you get a lot of complaints against you, yeah, this banda mujhe kuch sikha nahi raha, etc., then that reflects negatively on you. So we're setting that up in a way that everyone's encouraged, because अगर आपको कोई आके complain कर रहा है कि आप support नहीं कर रहे हैं, आप कुछ सीख नहीं रहे हैं किसी के नीचे, that's a failure of leadership. And that's something that we are trying to encourage even more so कि भाई आप support करें और सिखाएं आपके नीचे. मेरी खुद policy यही बन गई है कि where possible I'll take a step back and let the people sort of take a stab, especially if it's like something new. मतलब मुझे पता है अगर मैं इस पर response कर लूँ, I know exactly how to get the person to calm down or the client, if they're agitated, get them to calm down. I'll step back and wait, see someone like, and otherwise अगर नहीं नज़र आ रहा है कि कोई सामने से जाके ले रहा है, मैं पीछे खुद जाके उसको मैसेज कर रहा हूँ, यार तुम जवाब दो, if you want लिख लो, मैं देख लेता हूँ और फिर भेज देना. But karo, take that ownership. Take that ownership, take that experience for yourself.
So Zaayer, digital marketing के अंदर मतलब what are the different kinds of like roles that are out there? क्योंकि digital, I've heard the blanket term digital marketer, right? अब digital planning भी मैंने सुना है होता है, digital buying भी होता है, and there's content marketing, पता नहीं क्या क्या. So like what are the basic roles that are out there for digital marketing?
So within Pakistan, they're a little more consolidated at times, but a lot of times we also do have separation. So again, I'll give you both examples from the US, and they're mostly in Pakistan available as well. US, I was doing planning and buying. Digital planning obviously involved then planning across social, search, programmatic, or the central digital. We just refer to it digital, but it's essentially programmatic, and direct buying on the internet outside of social. So that will usually fall under programmatic / just the general term digital. Social is usually separated. Up social ke andar you have your Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, everything. That's all compiled. I have rarely ever seen a Facebook or Meta specific buyer.
Okay.
They're usually all social is all integrated into one. There are roles that will then have hybrid, which means you do both social and direct or programmatic buying. Search tends to be separated. Sometimes it will fall under the hybrid role. There have been instances where search and social are combined. That was very common before, now they're a little more separated. So those are your main sort of pillars that fall under digital, is programmatic and digital, social, search. SEO sometimes falls under.
And there are people who do all of these things as well?
Yes.
जैसे टेक में होता है ना, एक फुल स्टैक डेवलपर होता है, फिर एक फ्रंट एंड अलग होता है, बैक एंड अलग होता है.
A lot of digital resources I have met. In fact, like the senior manager I was mentioning yesterday, he's done all three.
Achha.
So I ask him a question about anything, he's versed in it.
Oh, okay.
I myself am a little lacking in search knowledge. For example, I've done social and programmatic and digital, but I lack in search a little bit. He's done all three. So there are people who have done all three. that's actually another thing that we are working on is setting up a rotation system. So you work a year in social,
Okay.
move to digital, learn
So you have
that.
a taste of everything.
You have a taste of everything, and then you can choose to specialize in one if you want to. Otherwise, then you can also, if you've done all three, then you have a base that you can use to jump into planning. And then you have experience on all three, so you understand the basics. And if you have specific questions about a platform, which again, if I had a specific question about social, I would go to the social specialist. But for the most part, I had enough social knowledge to do most of the planning myself.
So planners are like separate sort of professionals.
A lot of times planning and buying is together, but often, and especially in Pakistan, I've noticed this a little bit more, is planners will be separated and they do integrated planning. So integrated planning will involve TV, radio, print, all digital as well.
Okay.
But then you also, the problem with that then becomes then you can get 70%, 80% there based on consumer insights.
ठीक है.
कि भाई अगर अब मेरा consumer 80% जो है डिजिटल पे ही है, तो फिर मुझे डिजिटल पे ज़्यादा इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए. सो इतनी तो मुझे रिसर्च से पता चल जाती है. अब उसके अंदर स्पेसिफिकली मुझे क्या रेट्स मिलेंगे, क्या CPM होगा एक्सेट्रा, वो मैं नहीं कर सकता. अच्छा मेरे कितने इंप्रेशंस बनेंगे ना टोटल, वो तो मुझे रेट से पता चलेगा. तो फिर मुझे बायर के पास जाके उसके साथ बैठना होगा कि भाई तुम एडवाइस करो, यहाँ पे मैं इतना बजट डाल रहा हूँ, तुम खर्चा कर पाओगे, इज देयर इनफ स्केल, शुड आई बी गोइंग ओवर हियर, where should I focus, मुझे कितनी वैल्यू मिलेगी. So planners tend to be mostly separated, a little bit removed. When I did digital planning and buying, I did all of the digital planning and then I did the buying for programmatic as well. So programmatic का पूरा decision मैं खुद ले लेता था.
Okay.
Social के लिए then I would sit with the social team and be like, यार अच्छा this is what we have so far, what are your thoughts, इतना budget मैंने तुम्हें allocate किया, अब उसमें से बताओ क्या निकालोगे. So that sort of is the separation, planning and buying. One element which मुझे यहाँ पे I figured that I should introduce is analytics and digital analytics specifically.
Okay.
Because we're getting to a point, it's a bit something we are working on in Pakistan as well, like at our agency, is digital reporting and automating it. So when you can suddenly, you have to go into each platform every day, look at performance, compile it and everything, and that's all fine. What if all of it was centralized and done for you? You cut down the time you're spending, and then you can dive in deeper into historical performance. I can pull reports from each platform and everything, and sure, I mean, I used to do that. When I got to the Best Buy account in the US, I would pull one report and that included every single placement on every single campaign across every single vertical all together. So if I wanted to see programmatic performance specifically, I could see that across refrigerated goods, I could, or sort of large appliances and refrigerators.
So how many reports available?
Har qisam ki report. All the data was in one place. So I could splice it the way I want to pull historical performance. And I came here and asked the planners, can you do that? I'm like, nahin. Mujhe chahiye ye, nahi hai.
Of course. Any planner would love that, right?
And so that's when we started working on integrating all of that. And I mean, it's not the easiest. You have to understand each platform and build up your tech stack, etc. And that's, again, you introduce us as a technology company. We are working on developing quite a bit of this technology in-house as well, so that it's then available कि planners जाके historical performance देख सके. अब मुझे देखना है कि 2020 में मैं रमज़ान की प्लानिंग कर रहा हूँ, 2020 के नेशनल फूड्स के रमज़ान के कैंपेन में क्या परफॉर्मेंस आई थी. अब I could go back and try to find those reports. Google तो 2 साल में वैसे ही बंद कर देता है reports, so something like that. I think it was 2-year historical or something of the sort. So if I want to go back and see that across Google, Facebook, etc., account accesses, maybe you switched accounts, but when all of that is sort of stored in a data repository, you can go back and pull the entire report together. So something that could take me half a day to compile all of that information takes me barely half an hour to splice and pull it all together and get my insights.
That's brilliant. I mean, of course.
So that's what we're
when you're
working
planning
on
for anything, you need that sort of data and that those kinds of insights from historical insight.
And so suddenly digital के अंदर एक और avenue unlock हो गई है, analytics and architecture. So understanding and developing this architecture, which again then starts to fall into data and or sort of your data architecture and data engineering specific disciplines. But data science, for example, I had a dedicated data science resource who would sit and help me sort of analyze those reports and compile the data in the most digestible formats and reports. So literally he would sit there and make nice dashboards where all of my data would automatically pull in and plug in. I don't have to go and fill in the data manually. अच्छा इस महीने इतने impressions आए etc. वो सब automate होके आ जाते. He would build the sort of macros in such a way कि सब automate आके pull कर ले, pull हो जाती थी, and then I would just sit and look at the data and write insights. And that's where we're getting to a point where rather than sit and manually, I mean, even when you usually hire an entry-level resource who is going to be digital marketing, you train them, and then they just sit there and plug in this data. Yeah, make better use of them.
Absolutely. So now you're utilizing technology to automate the things
automate some of those very basic tasks. And I understand that in a lot of ways, labor in Pakistan is cheap, so it's not that inefficient, and that's why we haven't done this, right?
But then all the more opportunity, all the more reason to give them other things which are, so that improve their knowledge as well. Right?
I would rather have them understand and be trained in like writing those insights, not in entering data.
Yes.
Because वही होता है आपने insights वगैरह लिखी और सिर्फ data enter किया और फिर आपने manager को hand over कर दिया, वो बैठ के insights लिख रहा है यार, मतलब उसको भी बैठ के उससे insights लिखवाओ. Here you check it, you sit down with them. I mean, when I used to write insights, that's after the first couple because I needed the experience myself. I had associates do it. I was like, nahi, I know this is not your job description. So, I mean, if you really want to do this, you don't have to. But I would rather you sit down, tum likho hai, and then I'll sit down with you, we'll go through it together and we will edit and fix this together. And then you send it to the client because you wrote it the first time. So I want you to get the visibility and credit for it. So again, like I would rather them be learning, sitting there and learning that. And that's why automating some of the most mundane, mind-numbing tasks, which you have to fill out, like, I don't know, hundreds of cells with data and per human error.
Of course.
मतलब उसने गलत कुछ लिख दिया तो बैठ के हर 100 cell थोड़ी check करूँगा मैं.
Yeah.
So then trying to automate as much as
it's like
possible.
A win-win situation.
And having checks so that they are doing more deeper, more understanding work, and then obviously then time is not wasted, and all of that, we have higher reliability.
And you have an extra trained resource to help you later, right? So in Pakistan, like what are the main trends that you see in the next 5 years? What is changing besides the cookie thing that you mentioned?
What's changing? So essentially, I mean, we are going to start shifting more so towards digital. So there is continuing to be a shift from TV, and I mean, it's resistant, but as we progress, I mean, there is a slow shift towards digital. One thing that we are actively working on, and it's going to take a lot of hard work, is getting people used to the idea of data and using data to streamline your campaigns, particularly on digital, because a targeted campaign towards people who are interested in buying a car within the next year is always going to be more effective than just blasting it to people all across, a lot of whom may not even have the purchasing power to buy a car.
So less wastage.
So obviously using that data is less wastage. But that also requires getting on the other end and actually being able to attribute कि भाई ये dollars और ये रुपये सही खर्च हुए या नहीं हुए. अब वो अगर वो पता ही नहीं चलेगा तो फिर वो तो खुद भी बोलेगा ना, मतलब मैं क्या करूँ, मुझे कोई evidence तो नहीं नज़र आ रहा है ना that this works better. So
data is becoming increasingly important.
So data is becoming increasingly important and this will require a lot of concerted effort to get to that point where that data shows value. And I mean, I saw that while I was studying, I saw that in the US, that they were going through the same thing and like figuring out the attribution models and stuff. We are also trying to work on sort of attributing those purchases back. Again, there's a lot of models we're working on, quite a few.
And if you step back, like what kind of talent would you need like for this shift going forward?
Well, one major macro challenge that we're going to have to solve is that everything's in cash. And so how do I track cash? It's very hard. If I go into a store and make a purchase with cash, like that's it. I mean, I don't have any way of tracking that.
Yeah.
In the US, I would use a Visa card. Visa would sell that. You think Visa isn't selling that data? Visa is selling that data for a lot of money. That's why on credit cards, like they don't make a lot of money.
And who's it selling it to?
They are selling it to large data aggregation companies, Epsilon, Axiom. I used to buy, Visa data was the most expensive. I used to buy $1.50 CPM just to use Visa's data.
Because you want to know where exactly the money is being spent.
Data. I know this person bought Kraft natural cheese last grocery run.
That's like the holy grail of data, right?
I mean, it's very accurate, it's very precise. I mean, obviously, like, then Visa also got into like those data issues and privacy issues, so they zoomed out a little bit.
Okay.
Say this person is interested in cheese in general, let's say. उससे ज़्यादा मैं detail नहीं दे रहा उसने कौन सी चीज़ ली. Even though they can get that, they were not, because they're like it's privacy का concern हो जाता है. Because then you can really drill down. So there has been a step back globally, but again that data is available. अब cash में खरीदा तो मैं कैसे करूँ यार? It's very difficult. So we need to get to a point where we start to integrate and collect those sources of data. And again, we're working very hard to get that because the data doesn't have any value when it's fragmented. It needs to be compiled and used and targeted in an effective way for it to have value. About if you are a retailer, let's say multi-form, let's say for mattress, they can use their data for themselves and it'll be effective for them. It's not that it's not, like they can use that data very effectively within their own factories, but that's about it. Then when you go beyond that, it becomes a little bit more difficult. On the attribution end, there needs to be sort of some collection source and a way to attribute that back, and a lot of that comes back down to digital or card or even bank purchases, and then being able to send that back or having point of sale systems installed. Like those point of sale systems are also lacking across the country.
So it's in your interest.
Who are you tracking and retargeting? The top 10% of people who shop at places with point of sale systems. What about the people without point of sale systems?
That's the majority.
We need to be able, they are the majority. They are the people who you need to get to. So that's one trend. Another trend I will also touch upon is the usage of the US dollar in advertising, particularly in digital advertising. In digital advertising, मतलब जो बंदा ad देख रहा है वो पाकिस्तानी है, जो वेबसाइट पे आप ऐड देख रहे हो वो पाकिस्तानी है, जो एडवर्टाइजर है वो पाकिस्तानी है. तो यूएस डॉलर में काय का खरीद रहे हो भाई? यूएस डॉलर आया कहाँ से यहाँ पे? And digital advertising is done because you have Google, you want payment in US dollars.
Of course.
You have Meta, wants a payment in US dollars. That's where 80%
makes
of
sense
the
for them.
advertising is.
Oh.
Is Meta and Google platforms.
Bilkul.
And even when there are direct publishers, they're very happy because you buy a lot of it using Google on programmatic. So Google collects the money in dollars and pays them out in dollars, and they're sitting there very happy. कि अच्छा मुझे तो dollars में payments मिल रही है. That shift is something that we are actively working on right now. इसके देखो publisher पाकिस्तानी है, advertiser पाकिस्तानी है, जो बंदा ad देख रहा है वो पाकिस्तानी है, agency पाकिस्तानी है, तो पाकिस्तानी रुपये यूज़ करो. US कहाँ से आया?
And are you able to have that kind of influence to change this policy?
We are starting to push on publishers because I mean, it comes down to one simple fact. It comes down to the advertiser. Okay, the advertiser himself. जब हमने ad चलाई जुलाई में, US dollar was 210, 200, whatever. June में 180 था. So, or नहीं, it had hit. Whatever, regardless, it was let's say it was 210 in July. Ad चलाई. You get to December when you can actually make the payment to Google, US dollar 230 पे. So Google ने उस वक्त तो आपको PKR में बिल भेज दिया, लेकिन जब वो कन्वर्ट करने गया स्टेट बैंक के पास तो उसको तो 230 में मिल रहा है, तो वो आपके पास वापस आता है, भाईजान मुझे तो नहीं मिले पैसे, तो ये रो here's another bill for the difference.
To make up for that.
So आपने 30 लाख खर्च लिए, ये ले 3 लाख एक्स्ट्रा का बिल दो. अब वो आप जाके
आपका बजट आउट ऑफ वैक हो गया बिल्कुल.
एडवर्टाइजर के पास वापस जाओगे, बोलेगा ये क्या बकवास है,
You won't buy.
मैंने तो 30 लाख में खरीदा था. तो I mean that's what, so we're going back to advertisers now, or we will start to soon enough because we're first setting up the back end where the inventory is available. We'll go back and be like, look, you can buy it in USD. Google will send you another receipt. We will just come back to you with that receipt and be like, yeah, sorry, I mean मैं तो कुछ नहीं कर सकता, मैं अपनी जेब में से नहीं भर सकता ना, आपने खरीदा था.
Yeah.
So you can come back and we'll keep giving you bigger bills every time the currency depreciates, or you can just buy it in PKR. We'll set the thing in PKR. So then if the advertiser suddenly shifts to PKR, and the local publisher is not getting US dollar inventory, they're like, we may as well monetize in PKR. And we're having those conversations, and they are very, I mean, we started having those conversations and we're very happy that बहुत से publishers agree with us.
It just
and a lot
requires
of advertisers agree with us.
Some courage on the advertiser's part as well, right?
So we sat in the middle and we're like, yeah, look, we can't sit back and watch these dollars flow out consistently. So, and keep paying Google for this. I mean, even when Google pays out the local publishers, it's up to them if they want to bring that money back. We can't, I mean, we don't have any say in that. It's their platform, it's their money. If they bring it back, sure, cool.
Yeah.
But sometimes they don't. And again, it's just it's a circle, right? So you send $1,000, Google keeps a card, Google keeps another card, then they pay out to the publisher pays ad serving fees, etc. Half of it comes back into the country, even if they send all of it back.
Yeah.
So 50% still stays outside the country. So if we just circle that in Pakistan, and even if there are programmatic and ad serving fees, and it's maybe 10%, 15%, 20% laga lo. You send 20% abroad, the rest of the deal is done in PKR. And that is what we're trying to set up and make sure that all of that we don't have to deal with any outflows or inflows. So there's no like issues with that going on. It's just the entire circle is completed in Pakistan because ad is transacted, it's seen, it's published, everything is done in Pakistan. It's created in Pakistan. So that needs to be a drastic shift. And we're talking to advertisers, we're talking to publishers, they're all on board. They're like, yeah, I mean, Pakistan mein raha. So far, a lot of them have been on board. I'm sure we will face resistance in the market because, I mean, they had a pretty sweet deal getting money in dollars every month. But it has to start shifting. And especially when the advertisers start to make that shift, then the publishers have to acquiesce because otherwise they're just not getting anything. Because those were the people spending in dollars before, they're just not spending it.
And it's great for the whole ecosystem really, you know. And so as an agency, when you talk about these things, it seems to me कि आप लोगों का काफ़ी सारा जो काम है, it's not in isolation. It's you look at the granular picture of things. For example, you're looking at it's in your interest कि सब लोगों के पास credit card हो, for example, सब लोग banked हों, ज़्यादातर population banked हो. ये इस तरह की डील्स जो हैं वो PKR में हो फॉर एग्जांपल. तो इस तरह की कोई लाइक आर यू गाइस इन्वॉल्व इन एनी सॉर्ट ऑफ लॉबिंग ताकि लॉज चेंज हों, लॉज इम्प्रूव हों और यू नो मिलके कोई इस तरह का कंसोर्शियम है या कोई फोरम है, प्लेटफॉर्म?
We try on our own end, and obviously like advertisers associations, etc. we are affiliated, but at the end of the day, like it requires action and change on an understanding on the government's part. So yes, we can do our part and we keep pushing, but until someone has the courage to make these tough decisions and ensure and support us through this journey from the government's end, then we're still stuck. And the other problem is that as much as we fight, Google and Meta have a very sweet deal on this and getting those money. They don't have an office set up here.
Right.
We spend the money, we send the money to their Singapore office, and they're like sitting there happy. I mean, it's not a big enough market for them to actively support and like try and invest in. So they don't invest much. And we're having conversation with people, and I've had clients come and say to me that like, look, we invest so much money into this country, okay, and they don't, because we're local, we don't get the same respect. And these government employees, they'll be supporting Google and Meta. Absolutely. And they haven't invested much in this country at all. They haven't even set up an office. They haven't even created jobs. They've taken your labor and sent it out of the country, like skilled labor from here. So, I mean, no offense or I'm not trying to rail against Google or Meta. I mean, we work with them a lot and we have great relationships and they are great platforms, but we need their support locally to start to transact and make all of this happen in rupees. And we are actively having conversations with them there too.
And what you're doing is almost like a first step in sort of reversing the damage that's been done, so to speak. Yeah.
And I mean, look, we've been part of it obviously because that was the ecosystem and that's how it flowed. But as we are also maturing in the digital space, we are starting to take a more active look at our role within this country as well, which is that, I mean, we are a local group. We are, I mean, all of our employees are Pakistani.
Absolutely.
So we have to do our part to also support, like, the economy of the country. And so if we are sending a lot of dollars abroad, like, well, no, let's keep it local. Let's support our own economy and our own people.
A lot of people want to get into digital marketing because that's sort of, it's the buzzword these days. It's where people see their future, right? What's a good pathway for a young sort of, say, graduate or even a young student to get into digital marketing? How to break into that?
A lot of people, बहुत से लोग आगे बोलेंगे कि यार आपको डिजिटल मार्केटिंग के लिए मार्केटिंग की डिग्री चाहिए और हर चीज़ से आपको नहीं चाहिए. डिजिटल मार्केटिंग में जाने के लिए आपको प्लेटफॉर्म्स की अंडरस्टैंडिंग की ज़रूरत है. ठीक है, अब आप गूगल के बहुत कोर्सेज अवेलेबल हैं, मेटा के जो आपने कोर्सेज जब कर लिए, सब सर्टिफिकेशंस ले ली, दैट इज़ द फर्स्ट स्टेप. आई मीन इवन अगर आपने मार्केटिंग की डिग्री की और आप मतलब मैंने मार्केटिंग की डिग्री की थी, मैं एजेंसी में जाके बहुत कम ट्रांसलेट हुआ है. आई मीन इट हेल्प्स, मैं ये नहीं बोल रहा हूँ कि इट डजंट हेल्प. सो इफ़ यू हैव अ मार्केटिंग डिग्री एंड दी सर्टिफिकेशंस, आपको एज मिलेगा अब आप इंटरव्यू के लिए जाएंगे. बट अगर आपने नहीं भी किया, आप मेहनत करें, आप उसके अंदर जो है जस्ट अंडरस्टैंड दीज प्लेटफॉर्म्स बहुत तरह से चलता है. बहुत ट्यूटोरियल्स अवेलेबल है ऑनलाइन यूट्यूब पे, आप प्लेटफॉर्म्स के अंदर जाके देख सकते हैं. गूगल ने पूरी अपनी फ्री है तकरीबन, आप पूरा जाके गूगल एडवर्टाइजिंग का इकोसिस्टम जो है सीख लें. तकरीबन फ्री है, कोई उसमें नहीं है. सर्टिफिकेशंस आई थिंक वो होती हैं कुछ, बट even without that you can learn it, put that on your resume, talk to people. आप जाके बात करें. I mean यही होगा. I mean and I'm sure you've talked about in other podcasts, is yes, resume sending and everything works, लेकिन ज़्यादातर conversation से ये चीज़ें होती है. आप जाके किसी को चाय पिलाएं या खाना खिलाएं, आप उनसे बात करें, ask them about their experiences and then tell them about your own and what you've gotten, and they're more likely to get you an interview than any resume you send in. At least that's what I've experienced, and again, even just looking at the way that a lot of hiring is done, it's done by those people going out and actively talking to talent in the market, sort of those connections again. But those certifications go a long way in making sure कि आप दिखा रहे हैं कि देखो मुझे पता है क्या चल रहा है, मुझे पता है CPM क्या होगा and everything. आप मुझे आगे बोलेंगे कि यार एक कैंपेन बना दो तो मैं शेल वगैरह सब बना के दे दूँ, आप मुझे बस क्रिएटिव्स दो, मैं कैंपेन बना, और टैक्सोनॉमी दो और मैं कैंपेन बना दूँगा. If you can go and say that, it's a big difference.
So I have a radical question. What if I'm an A-level student या मैंने इंटर अभी किया है, complete किया है. What if I hear Zaayer Ali Merchant talk about this and I say यार मुझे I don't want to do my bachelor's. What if I just do my certifications? I get really good at Google platforms, Meta, and all of those other platforms, and I just use those, and I have a lot of conversations with the right people. Do you think I can get by? You think I can do well in the world?
I actually have a different opinion on this, and I mean, I'll go through the entire sort of explanation. Yes, you can. Okay. हम बहुत से मैनेजमेंट ट्रेनीज, बहुत से तो नहीं बट काफ़ी मैनेजमेंट ट्रेनीज को इस तरह से भी हायर करते हैं जिनके पास डिग्री नहीं हो. लेकिन एज अ प्रोपोनेंट ऑफ हायर एजुकेशन माई सेल्फ, मतलब ठीक है ग्रांटेड मैं US जाके पढ़ा हूँ एंड एवरीथिंग, बट just the experience and the understanding that you gain from going to and getting a higher education is paramount to then being able to have a good conversation with clients and think. I mean, the only thing I'll say is higher education encourages you to think. So I wouldn't discourage anyone. That being said, it's not that we don't hire people without higher education.
Okay.
We do. मतलब आपके पास degree नहीं हो, and I mean, let's say you can't afford to do a degree. That's fine. We understand. Do these certifications, etc., or not even just like learn about the industry in general and you come on board. We will support you through that higher education while you do that. And once so you'll have a salary to be able to live. And once you're done, you come on board with us, and then obviously work part of it off, part of it we pay, part of it you sort of work off the next few years. But then as soon as you finish with that degree, we immediately give you a raise to like full planner because you've already learned the basics while you were doing your degree and working. So we're working on actively supporting people through their higher education because we understand that uska access
that's
limited
a program
hai.
that you guys have.
Yeah. We absolutely do. You can definitely do your education while working with us. There's not that many slots that we have. Obviously, like there's how many we can finance. But yes, we are actively working with people who are currently pursuing their education, and you work through and you have the sort of same like level, you're learning consistently through, and your hours are also accommodated so that you can do both at the same time. And as soon as you're finished, we immediately sort of take you on board as a full-time employee.
That's fantastic.
Or no, full-time as in like sort of full employee rather than like just
full-fledged,
part-time, full-fledged employee.
Yeah, sure. Okay, great. Zaayer, thanks a lot for being here. I learned a lot about the digital world, and it was brilliant to hear you talk about the trends and all of that you've learned so far being in Pakistan.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Kaam Kahani. Till we meet next time, take care.